Since 2018 has decided that it wants to be the year of the Battle Royale, we've seen no shortage of new titles coming out. And one of those new titles is Paladins Realm Royale, previously known as Paladins Battlegrounds. Good job on changing that name, guys. Shows at least a little bit of originality. Joking aside, I thought that this game was invite only for a while until a very helpful Hi-Rez developer on Twitter reached out and said that you just need to go to this link. So shout out to you, man. Thanks for your help. So I booted it up, I gave it a try, and here are my first impressions. If I'm being honest, I really didn't get a whole lot of time with Paladins Realm Royale before the servers went offline. They're in a very, very early alpha stage of the game, so they're bringing the servers up and then they're taking them down just on a whim, without any fanfare, without any warning. And even though it's a little frustrating, I understand. These are going to be my first impressions of the game after only about 2 to 3 hours of play, so keep that in mind. And I am going to be a little bit kinder than I was to Radical Heights. And before you call me out on that for some sort of double standard or hypocrisy, here's the reason. 1, the only way to download Realm Royale is to go to the correct place on Paladins forums and download it there. 2, there is no monetization in Realm Royale as of the time of making this video. Will there be eventually? I don't doubt it. It's Hi-Rez Studios. Of course there will be. And it's going to be free to play. So obviously there will be monetization at some point, but it's not currently in there. So because of those two things, I'm going to be kinder to Realm Royale than I was to Radical Heights. However, that's not to say I don't have my criticisms. So going into the game, the first thing that I noticed is that all of the complaints that I've always had against Paladins and its art style are about the same. The colors are a little bit washed out, and the models between the characters and the environment don't really mesh very well. There's not a large sense of cohesion that you would expect. And while I would expect these gripes to be alleviated throughout the development of the game, we have to remember that this is on the Paladins engine, using a lot of Paladins assets. So while there will be some new stuff in this game, the art style is going to be consistent with what Paladins is. That said, the skybox for the island that you're doing your battle royale on, it looks fantastic. Sure, it can be pretty easy to make a skybox look really nice, but I actually had to take some time to admire this because there was clearly some work put into the overall horizon of this game. It actually started to make me wonder what all the planets and all of the realms that all of these characters are from are like. And that's something that I never got from Paladins itself. Granted, I haven't played Paladins in about a year, so take that with a grain of salt, but still. And also, like my criticism with Paladins, the shooting in Realm Royale doesn't feel particularly good. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of weight or power to a lot of the guns that you're firing, and hitting your enemies and getting hit yourself doesn't really feel as impactful as it should. However, if you are a fan of the Paladin shooting model, you will be right at home in Realm Royale, I think. A game of Realm Royale starts like you would expect it to, being a game in the Battle Royale genre. You go into a lobby, you wait for the lobby to fill up, then you jump out of an airplane, a zeppelin, and then you fall in a controlled descent to your target location. From there, you have pretty much nothing but a stupid little knife, which I don't even know why they put this into the game because it's absolutely useless. And then you go and find some treasure chests to hopefully find a gun. You can also find melee items like swords, but I don't really understand why the swords exist in the game. They deal a lot of damage, but the movement system doesn't really complement them in a way to make them useful, in my opinion. And I'll come back to that later. Another thing that you can find in chests are abilities. Now this is where Realm Royale actually stands out from the crowd as a Battle Royale game. On the build I played, you were allowed to have 2 different weapons and 2 different abilities. You could not put weapons in your ability slots, and you could not put abilities in your weapon slots, so there's no reason to not run around with abilities if you find them. You can find healing totems, healing potions, heroic leap, blink, Molotov, grenade, and a handful of others that I didn't mention. And while this is unique to Realm Royale, and while it can add some depth to the gameplay of the game, they don't really seem all that important when it comes to the actual moment-to-moment gameplay of combat. Maybe it's just because I suck and I'm new at the game, but the guns that you have and your ability to aim them are far more important. The abilities have a cooldown of like 20 or so seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're in the heat of combat, you're only able to fire those off once, and then they're gone. And for things like Molotov cocktails and grenades, You're just going to throw that, the enemy's probably going to avoid it, especially if they have a modicum of skill, and you'll have not only wasted that ability, but you'll have wasted your time that you could have otherwise used to reposition or actually shoot at the enemy instead of missing with a grenade. You could find 3 different kinds of abilities. You can find offensive ones, you can find defensive ones, and you can find movement ones. From my limited experience, the only ones that seemed worthwhile were the defensive ones. The healing potion, the healing totem, and probably the deployable wall. In a game like a Battle Royale where the healing options are limited, the healing abilities are invaluable. You can throw them down in combat, and that will give you a very good advantage against your enemy if it's a close fight. Same thing with the wall. These things are guaranteed to give you value rather than you just completely whiffing on a shot, and that's a big deal. As for the movement abilities, you might want to run around with one of those and a healing ability instead of just 2 healing abilities or a healing ability and a wall, because even though I don't think the movement abilities are quite good enough, they can still get you out of a tight spot if you position yourself well and use them quickly. But overall, there's not a lot of complexity in the movement, especially if you don't take one of those movement abilities. And I don't know about anybody else who's played the game, but it felt really slow to me. Even when I was sprinting on my character, and even when I was on my mount, the game felt incredibly slow. It felt like my character was walking through difficult terrain the whole time I was playing, and it wasn't fun to just move around. There's not a big difference between just jogging and then going on a full speed sprint, and the jump, for some reason, feels inconsistent, and at the same time, useless. Compare that to a game like Darwin Project, where just moving around the map is actually enjoyable. There's a bigger difference in your walk speed and your run speed, and there's a few extra things that you can do to get around the map faster. I'm hoping that Hi-Rez will notice how boring and unfun the movement is, and really spice it up. Because I think if there's one thing that can really make a mediocre game stand out and feel amazing, it's a very solid and a very fun and very engaging movement system. Heck, that's one of the reasons why Super Mario Odyssey is as praised as it is. At its core, it's a relatively shallow collectathon, but the movement is just plain fun. And because of that, people enjoy it. There's things to do, and there's ways to challenge yourself, and there's ways to go faster and faster. And while it's probably a stretch to compare Super Mario Odyssey to Paladins Realm Royale, I'm just trying to show you how much a good movement system can give to a game. And even though this is supposed to be a third-person shooter, that doesn't mean that you can't have more fun and more engaging movement. So I think what I would like to see is lowering the cooldowns on movement abilities and perhaps having a 5th ability slot or a separate ability slot altogether just for movement abilities. That way every character, every player, no matter what their playstyle is, they can have movement abilities on top of their normal abilities and their guns. Because in my opinion, for this game to stand out, it really has to put a good focus on the abilities. Because as far as I know, this is the first Battle Royale on the market that has a focus or an emphasis on abilities. And it really needs to run with that. When it was first playable and announced, I never got to play this build, but from what I understand, it was a squad-based affair where you chose one from a handful of classes, and you roamed the map as a team. Each character had their abilities, and the abilities defined those characters as well as the individual guns. But now the game is a little bit more generic. It's more of your typical Battle Royale where you're no name, no face, and you drop down to the planet, and you open up things and try to loot the best things you can find to help you win the game. The abilities are really cool though. There's a lot of potential in a system like this, and after a lot of tweaking, I can see this being a lot of fun. I haven't even mentioned some of the more unique things like the forge mechanic, where you can take the shards that you've gathered by disenchanting items that you don't want and spending a little time defending a little point so you can craft some armor potions or healing potions or even some epic or legendary armor, weapons, or abilities. It gives you a little more agency over the randomness of chests, and it gives players a point to converge on, even though it might leave them wide open. And if Hi-Rez continues to expand the gameplay and bring more and more unique things into Realm Royale that the Battle Royale genre hasn't seen yet, then I think this game has the potential to be very successful. We just have to see if they can tweak things in the right direction to give it that unique flair that it needs and that addicting gameplay loop that we all expect. Because as it is now, even those unique things that I mentioned aren't quite enough to elevate it in my eyes. There's still a lot of luck involved, like hoping that you don't get 2 swords and 2 abilities from your very first 2 chests, and then get pinned down by a guy with a submachine gun with you unable to do anything about it. There's still the intro sequence of jumping off of the Zeppelin and falling down to the planet, which I find very boring. I haven't timed how long it takes, but it's not insignificant, and it kinda drags the beginning of the game out, especially after you've spent so long in the lobby waiting for it to fill up. There's still a lot of aimlessly wandering around the map hoping to run into somebody or anybody just so you can get a little bit of action. There needs to be more forces driving players together in these kinds of games, and that's why I personally hold Darwin Project on such a high pedestal. The ability to proactively find your enemies, instead of just playing Where's Waldo with literally everybody on the server, adds a lot of agency to the game and to the genre that I think it really needs. Unfortunately, I don't really know how to fix that, but I'm not the game designer here, Hi-Rez is. So the ball is in their court. There's a lot of potential in this. And while I wouldn't say that it's worth playing right now in the state that it's in, I'd say it's worth keeping an eye on. Because at least it's trying to bring something new to the genre. All that's left now is to wait and see if they'll succeed. And that's gonna be it for this video. I do plan on streaming this game throughout its development at certain points whenever I feel like playing it and checking it out again, so keep an eye out for those. And be sure to not only subscribe here, but follow me on Twitch as well, because eventually my live streams will be moving to Twitch only. So be sure to follow me there if you want to make sure that you can catch all of my streams in the future. Aside from that, do all the usual stuff. Leave a comment down below about anything that you heard in this video. How do you think Paladins Realm Royale looks right now? Do you think it has a chance? And be sure to like the video if you like it, dislike it if you hated me or my stupid bald head, and subscribe for more awesome gaming content like this in the future, and I will see you next time.